My name is Imani, and at 39 years old, I believed I had achieved everything. I had a demanding career in finance, two wonderful children, and a beautiful home in Atlanta. I even purchased this house for my parents to live in after they lost their own. However, while I was at work, they moved my children's belongings into the cold, damp basement. The reason? To make space for their favored grandson. When I discovered my children crying, my mother told me, "This is my house, Amani. Be thankful." I simply smiled, unaware that the house was legally mine and the eviction notice was imminent. Before I continue, please let me know in the comments if you have ever faced a choice between your parents and your children. Please like and subscribe, as the aftermath of this situation was immense. The metallic click of the deadbolt echoed through the grand entrance hall. It was 9 o'clock in the evening. I had just concluded a 12-hour day analyzing market futures, and all I desired was to bid my children good night. The house was unnervingly quiet. Normally, I would be welcomed by the sounds of Zoe and Marcus arguing over a video game or laughing at a cartoon. Tonight, nothing, only the low hum of the large refrigerator. A sense of unease tightened in my stomach. I called out, "Zoe, Marcus, Mommy is home." Only silence answered. Then I heard it, a faint, muffled sound, a whimper. It wasn't originating from their bedrooms upstairs. It was coming from below me, from the basement. My blood ran cold. I let my leather briefcase fall to the marble floor and ran. I wrenched open the heavy basement door and practically stumbled down the carpeted stairs. The scene that greeted me stole the air from my lungs. My children, Zoe, my bright 10-year-old, and Marcus, my sweet 8-year-old, were huddled together on a plain mattress. It was one of the spare guest mattresses, simply placed on the cold, tiled floor. All around them, like scattered remnants, were their possessions, their suitcases, their toy chests, Marcus's bin of Lego bricks, Zoe's art supplies, all piled against the damp concrete wall. The basement was unfinished. It was where we stored holiday decorations and the old water heater. It was chilly and the air was thick with the scent of mildew and dust. Zoe looked up, her face streaked with tears, her nose red. "Mommy," she whispered as if afraid to speak. "Grandma Lorraine, she told us we have to move down here." I rushed over, pulling them both into my arms. They were freezing. "What do you mean, baby? What happened?" My little boy, Marcus, buried his face in my coat. His voice was small, broken. "She said our room is for cousin Leo now. She packed our things while we were at school. She said Leo is the real grandson and he deserves the best room. She said, we make too much noise." I stared past their heads at the single dim bulb illuminating the space. I saw their breath misting in the cold air. The real grandson. The words reverberated in the chill. A sharp, icy fury, unlike anything I had ever experienced, surged through my spine. It wasn't just anger, it was a terrifying, sudden clarity. I kissed them both on the head. "Stay here for 1 minute, don't move." I clenched my jaw so tightly my teeth ached. I turned and didn't walk. I stormed back up the stairs, my heels striking the wood like hammers. I was prepared for battle. I ascended the stairs from the basement, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs. I bypassed the main floor and took the upper stairs 2 at a time, heading directly for my children's wing. Their room, or what had been their room, was at the end of the hall. It was the second best suite in the house, just after the master. It possessed its own private bathroom and a large bay window overlooking the rose garden. I saw it before I even reached the door. The door was wide open, and the room was unrecognizable. All of Zoe's artwork had been ripped from the walls. Marcus's star-patterned curtains were gone. Their twin beds were gone. In their place stood a brand new king-sized bed with an expensive-looking comforter. Basketball pennants were crudely tacked to the walls. A massive 80-inch television, one we did not own this morning, was mounted on the wall opposite the bed. A new gaming console was already connected, its wires snaking across the floor. And there, in the center of the new bed, was my 9-year-old nephew, Leo. He was jumping up and down, still wearing his shoes, laughing wildly. My mother, Lorraine, was there. She was 63 years old, her face permanently stern from years of perceived slights. She was humming, her back to me, meticulously unfolding a new set of high thread count sheets. "Mom," I said. She didn't turn around. "Oh, you're home," she said, her voice breezy. She snapped a pillowcase in the air. "I'm just getting things rearranged. Your sister Alicia and Chad are on their way. They're going to be staying with us for a while, and little Leo needs a proper quiet space." My voice was shaking. I could barely force the words out. A quiet space, and you decided the best way to achieve that was to banish my 8 and 10-year-old children to the basement? You didn't even call me. You didn't think to ask me. That made her stop. She spun around, her face contorting into a mask of indignation. "What is that tone you're using with me, Amani? I am your mother. I don't need permission to rearrange things in my own house." She spat the words. "My own house. Your kids can stay anywhere. They're young. They'll be fine. Stop being so selfish. Honestly, you're 39 years old. When are you going to finally learn how to behave and respect your elders?" "My house." The words struck me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. The trembling in my voice, the hot tears of anger threatening to spill, all vanished, replaced by a sudden, chilling calm. My house. I remembered being 18 years old. I was the only black student in my advanced placement program to receive a full academic scholarship to a prestigious finance program. I ran home, clutching the acceptance letter, thinking this was the moment, thinking I had finally made her proud. My mother was on the porch talking to our neighbor. I held out the letter. She barely glanced at it. She just waved her hand dismissively and said, "She just got lucky. All that affirmative action, you know." Then she looked at me. "Now, you have to learn how to make real money to take care of this family, not just chase silly dreams with your books." I stood there on the porch, my great achievement reduced to nothing in an instant. And now, 21 years later, standing in the 6-bedroom, 5,000 square foot luxury home that I had purchased outright, nothing had changed. The shock in my system evaporated. The trembling in my hands ceased. I felt my face settle into a calm, cold mask. My breathing became deep and even. She mistook my silence for submission. She huffed, satisfied. "Good, now that that's settled, go tell your kids to keep it down. Leo needs to rest before his parents get here." I looked at her, really looked at her. I looked at the entitled child jumping on the bed. I thought about my own children, freezing in the chilly basement. I took one long, slow breath and smiled. My mother, Lorraine, crossed her arms, a smug expression settling on her face. She was anticipating the usual Imani reaction. She was waiting for me to cry, to beg, to plead, to list all the reasons my children deserved to remain in their own room. She was waiting for the confrontation she was certain she would win. In the corner of the doorway, my father, Joe, 64 years old, and a lifetime of enabling my mother, did what he always did. He found a spot on the wall to stare at, avoiding my gaze, wishing himself invisible. His silence was his tacit agreement. I looked away from my father's cowardice and refocused on my mother. She was still waiting, so I provided a response, but it wasn't the one she expected. I allowed a slow, cold smile to spread across my face. It didn't reach my eyes. "You're right, Mum," I said. My voice was suddenly calm, clear, and devoid of all emotion. "You are absolutely right. Leo deserves the best room." Lorraine's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. She hadn't foreseen this. Her victory felt too easily attained. After a second, her surprise melted into pure, gloating triumph. She believed she had broken me. "Well," she said, puffing herself up, "it's about time you saw things clearly." I didn't utter another word. I turned my back on her, on my father's silence, and on the desecrated room. I walked out into the hallway and proceeded directly back down the stairs to the cold, dark basement. My children were exactly where I had left them, huddled on the plain mattress. Zoe was attempting to be brave for her younger brother, but fresh tears streamed down her face. Marcus was simply shivering, his small hands tucked into his armpits for warmth. I heard my mother's footsteps following me down. She was reveling in her triumph. She loomed at the bottom of the stairs, a triumphant silhouette against the light filtering from the hallway. "See, kids," Lorraine announced, her voice dripping with condescension. "Your mother finally understands. I told you Grandma knows what's best for this family." I ignored her completely. I walked over and knelt on the cold, concrete floor directly in front of my children. I pulled out my own handkerchief and gently wiped Zoe's face, then Marcus's. "Zoe, Marcus," I said, my voice soft and filled with a warmth I hadn't possessed moments ago. "Don't cry any more, my loves," Zoe sniffled. But Grandma said—" "I know what Grandma said," I interrupted gently. I looked them both in the eyes and smiled, a genuine smile just for them. "Now, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Pack your bags." I gestured to the bin of Legos and Zoe's art supplies. "And that toy bin, too. We're going somewhere much, much better." The shift was immediate. Lorraine's triumphant posture vanished. "What?" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the concrete space. "What did you just say?" I stood up slowly, turning to face her. The smile I offered her was not the one I gave my children. This one was all ice. "What are you talking about, Amani?" she sputtered, her face turning red. "You're leaving? You're going to pack up and go because of this? Because of a silly room? Your sister is about to walk through that door. You're going to embarrass me in front of Alicia." I took a step toward her. She instinctively took a step back. "Oh, I'm not going anywhere, Mum," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the cold air. "Not tonight, anyway." I let the silence linger for a second, watching the confusion and panic battle for dominance in her eyes. "But I promise you," I continued, "you are about to learn precisely what it feels like to have nowhere to go. Very, very soon." Lorraine's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. She was utterly baffled. She had no script for this. She didn't know this Amani. And right on cue, as if summoned by the tension, a sound rang through the house from upstairs. The doorbell. My sister, the golden child, had arrived. The real drama was just beginning. Before I could even process the doorbell, I heard the front door burst open. There was no knock, no polite entry, just the sound of the heavy oak door slamming against the entryway wall. "We're here!" a voice shrieked. Alicia, my 37-year-old sister, the eternal golden child. I took a deep breath, braced myself, and led my children up the basement stairs. We emerged into the foyer just in time for the main event. My sister Alicia burst into the living room like a hurricane, all designer sunglasses and dramatic flair, trailing chaos in her wake. Right behind her was her husband, Chad. Chad, 39 years old, white, with the unearned confidence of a man who had never worked a real day in his life. He was dragging 4 oversized, ridiculously expensive suitcases. "Finally," Alicia announced to the room, pulling off her sunglasses as if she were a celebrity, gracing us with her presence. Chad, meanwhile, didn't bother to lift the suitcases. He dragged them across the polished oak floor of the living room, leaving 4 long, pale scratches in his wake. My father, Joe, who spent every Saturday waxing that floor, flinched. I saw his hands clench at his sides, but as usual, he said nothing. God, I am exhausted, Alicia declared, collapsing onto the velvet sofa. The flight was just brutal. Imani, why are you just standing there? Go get the rest of the bags from the car and someone get me a glass of wine. She hadn't even looked at me. She was busy inspecting her nails. Chad, oblivious to the damage he'd just caused, clapped my father on the shoulder with a wide, smug grin. Joe, what a place! Seriously great house, so spacious! He boomed. I told Alicia there was no need to worry. I told her your parents would definitely take care of us. My mother, Lorraine, was beaming, all her earlier panic forgotten. She rushed over to Alicia, fawning over her. Oh, my sweet baby, you must be so tired. Of course, Imani. Go get your sister some wine. Don't just stand there. And Mom, Alicia called out, her voice shrill. Is Leo's room ready? You did get the new mattress, right? And the air purifier. You know he can't sleep without his HEPA filter. My mother nodded eagerly. Of course, baby, it's all set up. The best room in the house, just like I promised. The best room, I echoed, my voice quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. Everyone froze. Alicia's head slowly turned toward me. Her eyes travelled down, noticing for the first time that Zoe and Marcus were standing beside me, clutching their jackets, their faces pale and tear-stained. She saw me standing at the top of the basement stairs. A slow, malicious smirk spread across her face. It was the same smirk she'd worn her entire life, right before she said something cruel. Oh, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. There you are. You and the kids are staying in the basement. That's perfect. She laughed a short, barking sound. That's actually great. The basement is basically soundproof, isn't it, Mum? At least Leo won't be bothered by all their screaming and running around when he's trying to study. You know how gifted he is. He needs his peace and quiet. I looked at my sister, the golden child, who had failed out of 2 different colleges. I looked at her husband, a man whose entire career was a series of failed startups, funded by my parents' retirement account, and I thought about my gifted nephew. I let out a short, dry laugh. Study, I mused. Alicia's smirk faltered. What's so funny? I don't know, Alicia, I said, walking slowly into the living room, my children close behind me. I just find it interesting that Leo suddenly needs so much quiet to study, because the last I heard he wasn't doing much studying. The last I heard he was expelled from that expensive private school for theft. Something about stealing other kids' Adderall and selling it. Alicia's face went white. My mother gasped, Imani, how dare you? I ignored my mother and turned my cold gaze on Chad, who was still standing by the scratched floor. So, Alicia? Chad, how long are you planning to crash this time, or is staying with us for a while the new term for indefinitely? Tell me, Chad, what happened? Did that revolutionary crypto startup of yours finally go bust again? Or was it the NFT marketplace for artisanal dog sweaters? I lose track. The air in the room was so thick I could barely breathe. The battle lines were drawn and I had just fired the first shot. The heavy silence in the living room stretched for a beat. My words hung in the air, sharp and poisonous. Chad and Alicia exchanged a look, a rapid, panicked flicker. Chad's smug, fat boy grin dissolved into a tight, angry line. He was the first to recover, letting out a short, forced laugh that sounded more like a bark. Wow, sister-in-law, he said, trying to regain his footing. That's a little sensitive, don't you think? He picked an imaginary piece of lint off his designer polo shirt. It's not busted. It's called a transition phase. The market is just correcting. We just need a place to stand our ground for a few months. That's all. Alicia, seeing her husband flailing, immediately switched to her most effective tactic, playing the victim. She ran to my mother, burying her face in Lorraine's shoulder in a way that would have been pathetic if it wasn't so practiced. "Mummy?" she wailed, her voice instantly thick with fake tears. "Are you going to let her talk to us like that? Look at her, Mum, she's being so mean." She pointed a finger at me, her face a mask of childish betrayal. "We're family, Amani. We're struggling, and you're just so rich working at your big fancy finance company. Why are you counting pennies with your own sister? You have this huge house all to yourself and your kids. The least you can do is share." My mother, Lorraine, reacted as if I had physically struck Alicia. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes blazing with a protective fury she had never once shown for me. "Imani!" she yelled, her voice vibrating with rage. "You shut your mouth right now. Your sister is in trouble. You are going to help her. This house is more than big enough for everyone. God knows you've been living here for free long enough. The least you can do is share some of that space with your family. You ungrateful, selfish child, living for free." The words landed one by one like stones, dropped into a deep, dark well. The injustice of it, the sheer, staggering hypocrisy, sucked the air from my lungs. The entire living room seemed to fade into a dull roar. All I could hear was that phrase, living for free. The scar tissue over that old wound ripped wide open. I remembered, of course I remembered. I remembered the night 2 years ago when this whole charade began. It wasn't a calm evening like this one. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and a vicious thunderstorm was tearing Atlanta apart. I was asleep when my phone rang, the sound jarring me awake. It was my mother. I answered, confused and half asleep. All I heard was hysterical sobbing. "Imani, Imani, you have to help us. Mum, what's wrong? Where are you?" "We lost it, Imani," she cried. "The bank, they took the house, they foreclosed. We're on the sidewalk. Everything is on the sidewalk." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about? What foreclosure? You paid off your mortgage years ago." Then I heard my father's voice, defeated. "It was Chad, honey, that new business, that crypto mining thing. We took out a second mortgage to help him. We gave him our retirement." The line went quiet, filled only by my mother's sobs and the howl of the wind. They had given him everything, their entire nest egg. $500,000 earned over 40 years of work, gone, handed over to a con artist with a good smile, all because he was married to their golden child. And now they were homeless. I, the ungrateful daughter, got out of my warm bed. I got dressed. I got in my car and drove 3 hours in the pouring rain to their old suburb. I found them exactly as she'd said, sitting on a wet mattress on the curb, their belongings soaked under the flashing red and blue lights of a sheriff's car. They looked pathetic. I packed them and their few remaining dry possessions into my car. I drove them 3 hours back to my small, 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I put them in my own bed and took the couch. They never apologized. They never even really thanked me. They just complained that my apartment was small. 1 week later, I took my entire 6-figure corporate bonus, the money I had been saving for a down payment on my own dream home. I liquidated my stock options. I drained my savings, and I bought this house. This 6-bedroom, 5,000 square foot luxury home in Alpharetta. I bought it in cash. My name and only my name is on the deed. I bought it so my parents wouldn't be homeless. I bought it so my children could have a backyard. I bought it so my family, the one that had only ever taken from me, would have a safe place to land. And now, standing in the foyer of the house I owned, the house I paid for, I was being called ungrateful. I was informed that I was occupying their property without cost. The final vestige of filial duty within me simply dissolved and ceased to exist. The chill pervading my being wasn't merely cold, it was an unyielding frost. I inhaled deeply, suppressing the recollection of that damp evening. I sealed it away with all the other wrongs that had been inflicted. The frost inside me merely solidified further. I observed my sister Alicia still clinging to our mother's arm. "I am not affluent, Alicia," I stated, my voice piercing through her dramatic display. "I am simply financially astute. You might consider adopting that practice yourself." That did it. Chad, who had been relishing the unfolding spectacle, lost his composure. He could not tolerate my gaining an advantage. He advanced 2 considerable strides, employing his stature to intimidate me. He exuded the aroma of inexpensive cologne and an air of entitlement. "Listen here, Amani," he snarled, his voice descending to a low, menacing register. "You need to cease your insolence. Right now, you believe you are superior to us." He leaned in closer. "I understand your profession, all your ingenious methods, your creative bookkeeping. We are family. I know you've been concealing funds, making transfers." A truly repulsive expression contorted his features into a smile. "How would you feel about a call to the IRS, A complete examination. I suspect they would relish an inspection of your meticulously arranged investments. You wouldn't wish to jeopardize this substantial, opulent residence, would you? You wouldn't want to lose your children." Alicia, witnessing her husband assert his authority, beamed with a malevolent delight. "Yes, Amani," she chimed in, her voice giddy. "You should be agreeable with us or you'll face incarceration, and then perhaps we shall be the ones to raise your children within this dwelling." I regarded them. I gazed upon this indolent, incapable charlatan who couldn't successfully operate a simple refreshment stand, and my sister whose sole talent was manipulation. They were issuing threats to me, a certified financial analyst with the IRS. I looked up at Chad, who was still attempting to intimidate me, his face contorted with rage. I did not waver, I did not even blink. I merely raised an eyebrow. "Are you threatening me, Chad?" I inquired, my voice dangerously subdued. "Are you initiating a financial malfeasance inquiry against me?" I paused, allowing the question to resonate. That is a daring maneuver, especially within a domicile that, as of this very moment, is recording audio via no fewer than 4 distinct high-definition security cameras. The color drained from Chad's countenance. Alicia's jaw slackened. "What?" Alicia whispered, her gaze darting around wildly. My mother, Lorraine, emitted a scoff, attempting to reassert control. "She is fabricating. This house possesses no surveillance equipment. I reside here. I would be privy to such an arrangement." I offered her that same frigid smile. "Oh, mother," I responded softly, "that is merely what I permitted you to believe." The apprehension in Chad's eyes was gratifying. Before any of them could utter another sound, I turned my back on them. I gently took Zoe's and Marcus's hands. "Come along, my dears. Let's proceed to Mommy's study." I calmly led them down the corridor to my home office, the solitary room they were expressly forbidden from entering. I opened the door, guided my children inside, and then closed the sturdy wooden barrier behind us. I engaged the deadbolt. The click of the lock engaging was the most resonant sound in existence. Outside, the clamor erupted. Alicia was shrieking my name. Chad was uttering curses, his fist striking the door. My mother was shouting, "Amani, you open this door. Open it this instant." I disregarded it all. I settled into my leather executive chair, drew my children onto my lap, and finally, truly commenced my strategizing. Within my office, serenity prevailed. I had effectively muted the surrounding discord. I settled my children onto the plush leather sofa, provided them both with their iPads and headphones, and initiated their favored motion picture. They were apprehensive, but they were secure. For the present, that was all that signified. I resumed my position in my high-backed leather chair, my sanctuary of solitude. My desk was meticulously organized. My monitors remained dormant. I was a financial analyst. My domain encompassed numerical data, risk assessment, and consequential outcomes. Beyond the formidable oak door, the animalistic pandemonium raged. The pounding grew frantic. "Amani, you coward, open this door." That was Chad, his voice strained with impotent fury. "Amani, cease this. Stop behaving like a child." That was Alicia, her shriek reaching an agonizing new pitch. And most pronounced of all, my mother. "Amani Davis, you unlock this door. I am your mother. You will not show me disrespect in my own residence." I remained oblivious to their pleas. The cacophony was mere background noise. I retrieved my mobile device. My fingers were steady. I did not contact the authorities, not yet. The moment was not yet ripe. I did not summon my legal counsel. That would be the ultimate step, not the immediate one. I scrolled through my contact list and selected a name. The phone rang once. "David speaking." "David, it's Amani Davis. How are you?" My voice was composed, precise, the tone I employed to finalize multi-million-dollar transactions. "Amani, I'm well, always well. What can I do for you? Are we prepared to proceed with the sale of that property in Alpharetta?" I reclined in my chair, glancing at the secured door. The persistent thudding was causing the wood to vibrate. "Listen, David," I stated, my voice perfectly even. "There has been a minor alteration in our plans, a significant development. We are no longer proceeding with the sale of the Alpharetta residence." "Oh, I see." "Instead," I continued, "I require your immediate assistance. I need you to access a file. It should be from 2 years prior. It pertains to a rent-to-own arrangement, the one I drafted for my parents." "Ah, indeed, I recall that. You wish to provide them with peace of mind. Most generous. What about it?" "I need you to email me a digital copy of the fully executed agreement, immediately. I require the version bearing the signatures of both Joseph and Lorraine Davis. And David, prior to dispatching it, please accentuate Section 12, subsection B, the guest and occupancy provision." There was a pause on his end. "Amani, is everything satisfactory?" I observed my children nestled safely beneath their blankets, engrossed in their film. "Everything is purely business, David, as it always is. Kindly dispatch that email without delay. I would be most appreciative." "Understood. It is en route." I concluded the call. The persistent hammering on the door had escalated into a furious rhythmic pounding. They were losing their composure, utterly bewildered by my silence. The threats intensified. "Amani, I am not jesting with you." My mother's voice was raw, hysterical. She had transitioned from fury to sheer panic. "You believe you can simply barricade yourself in there? You believe you are in command?" Another volley of pounding. "Amani, surrender your credit card. I am quite serious. You must provide it to me presently. I need to order that new king-sized mattress for Leo. The one your daughter Zoe possesses is antiquated and frankly repulsive. I will not permit my precious grandchild to slumber on such a soiled item." Her words, intended as a final crushing insult, barely registered. I remained seated, my gaze fixed on my laptop. I monitored my inbox and then I detected it. A single pleasing chime, a new email. Subject, Alpharetta Agreement, highlighted. A slow, chilling smile spread across my features. The moment had arrived. I stood, adjusted my blazer, and approached the door. The conflict had concluded. The execution was imminent. I stood before the door. The clamor outside had ceased, supplanted by a tense, expectant hush. I drew one final deep breath. My hand was remarkably steady as I reached for the deadbolt. I turned the lock. The click was resounding and definitive. I pulled the substantial oak door inward. They all stumbled forward, a consolidated front of resentment. My mother, Lorraine, was at the forefront, her countenance vibrating with indignation. Behind her, Alicia's eyes were narrowed to predatory slits. Chad puffed out his chest, attempting to project menace, and my father, Joe, hovered in the rear, his expression a mask of pallid cowardice. They were all present, their faces grim, demanding my capitulation. My mother, Lorraine, surged forward, her face flushed. "It's about time. Have you lost your senses? Hiding in there. Now hand over your credit card. I must order that mattress for Leo before the delivery window expires." I remained motionless. I stood by my desk, my children positioned protectively behind me, and addressed her. My expression was serene. My voice was frigid. "No, Mother, I will not be financing that mattress." Lorraine came to an abrupt halt. "What? What did you just say to me?" "I said no." She looked at me as if I had inexplicably sprouted an extra head. You dare to defy me in my own home after all I've—" "Mother," I interrupted. My voice was not raised, but it was so sharp, so lethal it silenced the entire room. "Enough, just stop. This is not your residence, and it has never been your residence." The subsequent silence was absolute. Alicia's jaw dropped. Chad appeared momentarily stunned. My father flinched as if I had physically struck him. My dad was the first to regain his voice, weak and placating as always. "Amity, my dear, what are you implying? You know your mother and I. This is our home." "Is it?" I inquired, turning my gaze upon him. He immediately averted his eyes, incapable of meeting my stare. "What did you do, Dad? What did you both do? You forfeited your residence. You lost the house where I grew up. You lost everything." I turned back to my mother, whose face had now turned pale with a dawning horror. "You lost your house. You were subjected to foreclosure. And I, your selfish, ungrateful daughter, I purchased this one." I let the words hang in the air. I acquired this 6-bedroom, 5,000 square foot dwelling with my funds. My bonus, the money I earned, and for 2 years I have permitted you to reside within it for 0. Absolutely no rent payments, not a single utility bill. I allowed you to live here at no expense. "Do you recall?" I asked, my voice deadly soft. "The rent-to-own contract I had you both sign 2 years ago?" The recollection was so vivid it felt as though it were yesterday. It had not been a day of triumph. It had been profoundly humiliating. I remember driving to the dismal grey apartment complex they had been forced to rent following the foreclosure. The entire complex reeked of stale cigarettes and boiled cabbage. They were huddled on a stained sofa, their spirits broken, surrounded by the meagre possessions the bank had not repossessed. My father simply stared at the floor, shame radiating from him. My mother, even then, was attempting to spin the situation. "It's merely a temporary setback," she had muttered, wringing her hands. "That Chad, he's a good boy. He simply has terrible luck. That cryptocurrency mining venture was a brilliant idea. The market just shifted." I lacked the heart to inform her that Chad wasn't unlucky. He was an incompetent predator, and he had devoured their life savings. I possessed the file in my briefcase, the deed, the title, all registered in my name, and I had the other document, the one my legal counsel had prepared. I should have disclosed the truth to them. I should have established the rules. I should have stated, "This is my residence and these are my directives." But I refrained. I was unable to do so as I was still that 18-year-old girl on the porch clutching her scholarship, desperately seeking a single word of approval. So I deceived them. I, a senior financial analyst who operated by figures and stark realities, lied to my own parents to preserve their fragile pride. I recalled my own words. "Mom, Dad, I've discovered a resolution. It's a It's a special program my company provides, a sort of executive rent-to-own arrangement. It's intricate, but it's a method for me to invest, and it aids you in getting back on your feet." My mother's eyes had lit up, not with gratitude, but with regained status. "Oh, a rent to own. Well, that sounds sensible. Yes, we can manage that." My father merely nodded, relieved he didn't have to confront the truth. "That's excellent, Amani. That's genuinely commendable of you." I pushed the document across the table. "It's merely a formality for my company's records. A lease agreement, essentially. It simply states that you are the occupants. It's for tax purposes. Just sign here and here." And they did without perusing a single word. They affixed their signatures on the designated lines directly beneath the clearly printed inscription. Tenant Joseph Davis and Tenant Lorraine Davis. I had acted out of consideration. I had acted to spare their feelings. I had been a fool. I had been so incredibly naive, so desperate for their affection, that I had enabled their delusion. I had granted them the capacity to believe they were still in charge. And now, 2 years later, that benevolence was being cast back at me. It was the reason my children were shivering in a basement. I glanced back at my mother, who was still sputtering. That was for your taxes, Amani. You stated as much yourself. It was merely paperwork for your business." Alicia and Chad exchanged glances, their faces ashen. The implications of my pronouncements were beginning to dawn on them, but in two distinctly different ways. Alicia, as was her wont, gravitated immediately towards envy. Her voice was a choked whisper. You own this house, this entire residence. You are that wealthy. You've been deceiving us all this time." Chad's reaction differed. He displayed no jealousy. His mind was calculating. I could perceive the mental gears grinding within his predatory intellect. His eyes darted around the opulent living area, reassessing his surroundings. He was no longer merely a guest. He was on someone else's property. Wait, he interjected, raising a hand. "It's in your name, exclusively yours, not connected to your parents' assets at all." I disregarded them both, maintaining my focus on my mother. She was still clinging to the fabrication I had presented to her 2 years prior, the deception I had constructed to safeguard her pride. "No, Mother," I stated, my voice flat and devoid of any discernible emotion. "It was not for my taxes. It was not a special program. It was a standard month-to-month residential tenancy agreement, the kind governed by the statutes of the state of Georgia." I turned my back on their astonished visages and proceeded to my desk. I took my seat. The pounding on the door, the screams, the threats, all seemed so remote now. They had been assaulting the entrance of a dwelling that did not even belong to them. I looked at my laptop screen, and precisely on cue, as if summoned by the cosmos, a small notification materialized in the corner of my screen. A ping. A new email had arrived. The subject line read, "Alpharetta Agreement." Highlighted, I smiled. "Thank you, David," I murmured to myself. I clicked the email. I opened the PDF attachment, and there it was in resplendent, irrefutable black and white. My legal representative had executed his duties admirably. I rotated the substantial 32-inch monitor on my desk so that it faced the doorway, where my entire bewildered family remained standing. The PDF document was displayed in full screen mode. "You are not required to take my word for it," I announced, my voice resonating within the quiet study. "You may peruse it yourselves." I gestured towards the summit of the document. Page 1, Section 1, Parties to the Agreement. I vocalized the words for their benefit. "This agreement is made between the following parties: landlord Amani K. Davis." Then I indicated the line directly below it. "And tenant Joseph R. Davis, tenant Lorraine M. Davis. I scrolled to the concluding page, to their digital signatures, time-stamped and legally binding. I looked up at my mother. Her complexion was as white as bleached linen. She appeared as though she was struggling for breath. "You are my tenants, mother," I stated, "and I am your landlord." I allowed the image of their signatures to hover in the air for a moment. My mother's hand covered her mouth. My father simply stared, his face ashen. "You see," I continued, my voice as serene as that of a surgeon, "I am a financial analyst. I engage in risk mitigation, and I possessed precise knowledge of those with whom I was dealing when I acquired this residence." I scrolled the PDF document upward from the signature page. "You are both so preoccupied with your indignation that you neglected to examine the document you signed. But that is quite acceptable. I am a professional. I scrutinize everything, and I recall one particular section." My cursor moved across the screen. I clicked. The document zoomed in on a specific block of text. The vibrant yellow highlight from my property manager, David, seemed almost incandescent. "Here it is," I declared. "Permit me to read it aloud for you, simply to ensure there is no ambiguity. Section 12, subsection B, designated the guest and occupancy clause." I paused. Chad's gaze was now fixed intently on the screen. He understood the concept of a contractual stipulation. It states, and I quote, "The tenant agrees not to permit any other individuals, persons, or parties to occupy the premises for a duration exceeding 48 hours without the explicit written consent of the landlord, Amani K. Davis." I let that sink in. I do not recall signing any consent forms for Alicia, Chad, and Leo to take up residence. Do you? My mother merely gaped at me. "But it improves," I stated, moving my cursor to the subsequent highlighted sentence. It continues, "Furthermore, the tenant agrees not to alter, modify, reconfigure, or change the primary living spaces of any occupants listed as residents herein, specifically the minor dependents of the landlord, Zoe Davis and Marcus Davis." I leaned back in my chair. It is all explicitly detailed here in plain English. "Mother, you did not merely facilitate the relocation of your other daughter and her husband. You displaced my children. You evicted them from their designated, legally protected rooms." I looked up from the screen, my gaze sweeping over their terrified faces one by one. "Which implies," I continued, my voice dropping to an icy whisper, "that as of approximately 9 o'clock this morning, when you relocated my children's sleeping quarters to the basement, you, mother, and you, father, are in severe material and incurable breach of this contract." The silence within the office was absolute. It was so profound that I could discern the faint hum of the computer's cooling fan. I could hear my son Marcus obliviously whisper something to his sister about their game. Beyond my office, in the corridor, the world had come to a standstill. My mother's complexion had transformed from white to a sickly, mottled grey. Her mouth was agape, but no sound emerged. She resembled a fish suffocating for air. My father, Joe, simply leaned back against the doorframe, his hand pressed to his chest, and he appeared ancient. He looked utterly, completely vanquished. But Alicia and Chad, their reactions were distinct. Alicia, the favoured child, was the first to find her voice, and it vibrated with pure, unadulterated envy. You, she stammered, pointing a trembling digit at me. "You did lie. You lied to all of us. You allowed us to believe you were just like us. You purchased this entire residence. You are that wealthy. You've been concealing this all this time." Her voice ascended into a shriek. She wasn't incensed about the contract. She was infuriated that I possessed a power she was unaware of. She was angered that the sister she had consistently disparaged was, in fact, the one holding all the cards. But Chad was different. His countenance was not one of anger. It was not one of jealousy. It was calculating. His eyes, which had been wide with shock, suddenly narrowed. He was looking at me, but not truly at me. He was perceiving an asset, a predicament, a financial enigma. "Just a moment," he stated, his voice low and appraising. "Hold on. This residence, it's in her name, exclusively hers. It is not linked to your financial assets." He glanced at my parents. "It was not part of any inheritance or family trust. It is 100% solely her personal property." He looked back at me, a peculiar, covetous glimmer in his eyes. He was not seeing a sister-in-law. He was perceiving a mark, and he was endeavoring to ascertain the advantageous angle. As we all stood frozen in that tableau of our altered reality, a new sound pierced the heavy stillness. The doorbell. It rang loud and insistent, its reverberations echoing through the grand foyer. It was so out of place, so utterly mundane, it felt akin to a gunshot. Alicia flinched. My father appeared relieved by the interruption. My mother and Chad were still attempting to process the words breach of contract. They were paralyzed. I, however, was not. I inhaled. "Excuse me," I announced, my voice crisp. I exited my office, brushing past my mother's shoulder as if she were an inanimate object I was endeavoring to circumvent. I left them all standing in the corridor, fixated on the illuminated monitor, and proceeded to the front door. My children, Zoe and Marcus, having heard the bell, had cautiously emerged from the office, peeking from the hallway, their small faces pale with bewilderment. I opened the heavy oak portal. Two individuals garbed in bright red company polos stood on my porch. Behind them, resting on a dolly, was a colossal king-sized mattress encased in thick plastic. The lead delivery man, holding a clipboard, offered a smile. "Good evening, ma'am. We have a delivery for a Mrs. This is Lorraine Davis." "I am Lorraine Davis." My mother's voice suddenly erupted from behind me. She shoved past me, pushing me aside to stand defiantly in the doorway, desperately attempting to reassert her authority. "That is my mattress. Bring it inside." The delivery man glanced from her to me, perplexed by the palpable tension. He consulted his clipboard. "All right, ma'am. This appears to be a valid order. One Royal Legacy king-size mattress. The total, including delivery and taxes, comes to $3,274. $3,000, I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. $3,000 for her precious grandbaby, while my own children were expected to sleep on a musty cot in a concrete room. The sheer audacity, the unmitigated entitlement, was simply breathtaking. Lorraine, still completely detached from her new reality, didn't even flinch. She remained the queen of her imaginary castle. She didn't have her purse. She didn't possess a credit card. With a sharp, demanding finger pointed directly at me, she barked, her voice high and imperious, "Imani, pay the man." There was no request, only a command. She was still playing the role of the matriarch, and I the disobedient child. She genuinely believed that after everything I had just revealed, I would simply fall back into line, that her will was absolute. This was the pivotal moment. The entire family watched from the hallway, Alicia, Chad, my father, my children, and this delivery man. This stranger was the first member of the public to witness the shift in power. I smiled, a small, polite, professional smile. Stepping forward, I moved past my mother, who was still blocking the entrance. I looked directly at the delivery man, my voice infused with the pleasant, helpful tone I reserved for corporate clients. "Excuse me, sir," I stated, my voice resonating with clarity. I am so sorry, but there has been a rather significant misunderstanding here. The delivery man's smile faltered. A misunderstanding, ma'am? Yes, I confirmed, nodding. I gestured politely towards my mother, who was glaring at me with an expression of pure venomous confusion. This woman, Mrs. Davis, is not the homeowner. She has absolutely no authority to place any orders to this address. Imani, my mother hissed, her voice low and dangerous. What are you doing? Stop this nonsense. I continued to address the delivery man, my expression one of calm, professional concern. I am the homeowner, Imani Davis. This woman is a tenant, a long-term resident, and unfortunately, she is in serious violation of her lease agreement. The delivery man's eyes widened. This was far more information than he needed, and he clearly wished he was anywhere else. Okay, ma'am. Look, I just need to get paid, and I understand that, I said, my voice remaining kind. But you need to understand that this person, I gestured to my mother again, has no financial authority in this house. She will not be paying you because she has no funds, and I will not be paying you because I did not authorize this purchase. You, my mother sputtered, her face contorting into a deep, blotchy red. She was finally comprehending my actions. I was exposing her personal affairs. I was dismantling her private family power structure and revealing it as a sham in front of an outsider. So I'm afraid, I continued, that you will have to take the mattress back. No! Lorraine shrieked, lunging forward. That is my mattress. I ordered it, Imani. You will pay him. You will not do this to me. The delivery man and his partner instinctively took a half step back, startled by her outburst. I held my ground, my voice no longer pleasant, but icy. Sir, this woman is a tenant who is currently in the process of being evicted for cause. She is trespassing. She has no authority here. Please remove the unauthorized item from my property. Evicted, trespassing. I deliberately used those words, ensuring they landed with impact. The delivery man, now visibly alarmed, held up his hands. No problem, ma'am. No problem at all. You got it. He was done. This was not a situation he wanted any part of. He nodded to his partner. All right, pull it back. No payment, no delivery. Let's go. No, my mother screamed, attempting to physically grab the mattress as they began to roll it back towards the truck. You can't. That is for my grandson, Imani. The two men, maintaining their professionalism, expertly maneuvered the large mattress off the porch, down the steps and back onto the truck's hydraulic lift. My mother stood in the open doorway, her entire body trembling, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She was speechless, watching her power, her authority, her $3,000 symbol of status being loaded onto a truck and driven away. The delivery man offered me one last hurried nod. Have a good night, ma'am. He practically jogged back to the truck, slammed the door, and they sped off. The night abruptly became quiet again, the only sound the distant rumble of the truck's engine fading down the street. I stood in the silence for a long moment before calmly closing the front door. The click of the lock echoed in the foyer. Turning around, I saw my father had retreated into the shadows of the hallway. Alicia and Chad simply stared, their faces a mixture of horror and disbelief. My mother, Lorraine, remained by the door, her back to me, trembling. I watched her, waiting. She turned around very slowly. Her face was no longer red, but a pale, terrifying white. Her eyes held not just anger, but a humiliation so profound, so absolute it resembled hatred. When she finally spoke, it wasn't a yell, but a low, guttural, animalistic sound. How dare you? Then came the explosion. Imani! She screamed, her voice cracking. How dare you? How dare you humiliate me in my own home in front of strangers? You made me look like nothing, like trash. She was sobbing now, but they were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply looked at her, my face as cold and still as a frozen lake. I did, I replied, my voice flat. I humiliated you. You took my 8 and 10-year-old children, your grandchildren, and you threw their belongings into a cold, damp basement. You made them feel like trash. You made them feel like nothing. You didn't care about their humiliation. You only care about yours. Now you know exactly how it feels. Welcome to the club, Mum. My mother's face crumpled, but it wasn't the cathartic breakdown of someone who understood the pain they had caused. It was the public, theatrical collapse of a narcissist who had just been checkmated. Her power, built on a foundation of my silence and guilt, had just been publicly demolished. I had humiliated her. I had stripped her of her status. And in our world, in the affluent, tight-knit African American community of Alpharetta, public perception wasn't merely important, it was everything. She knew she had lost control of the situation within the house. The contract was undeniable. The deed was mine. She couldn't bully me. She couldn't command me. So defeated on this battlefield, she immediately escalated the war to a new one. She reached for her ultimate weapon, the community. Her body still trembled with rage, but her hands as they reached for her iPhone were perfectly steady. She scrolled through her contacts, her thumb jabbing at the screen. She knew precisely who to call. She didn't call the police. She called someone far more powerful. She called Aunt Clara. Aunt Clara, the 70-year-old matriarch of the First Baptist Church, the community's unofficial historian and chief information officer, the woman whose opinion could make or break a family's reputation before Sunday service had even concluded. My mother pressed the phone to her ear, and in an instant her entire demeanor shifted. The rapid rage vanished, replaced by the most convincing performance of her life. Her voice when she spoke was a broken, trembling, tear-soaked whisper. "Clara," she choked out. "Oh, Clara, it's me. It's Lorraine. Oh, God. Clara, I'm so scared. I don't know what to do." Alicia and Chad, who had been watching in stunned silence, instantly understood. This was a play they knew well. Alicia's eyes lit up. Chad's tense shoulders relaxed. He leaned against the wall with a smirk, ready to watch. My mother sank down onto the bottom stair, a perfect portrait of a broken victim. It's Imani," she sobbed into the phone. She's throwing us out. She's throwing her father and me out onto the street right now. Yes, just because Alicia and the baby came to stay. She said we can't be here." My father, Joe, just watched, his face paling. He opened his mouth as if to protest the lie, then closed it, his eyes fixed on the floor. His silence was his tacit agreement. Lorraine was just getting started. This was her masterpiece. She's rich now, Clara. She's so rich from that big finance job. And she's forgotten where she came from. She's lost her soul. She's got us trapped here. She's saying this isn't even our house." She paused, listening, letting the poison seep through the phone line. She tricked us," my mother wailed, her voice rising in manufactured hysteria. "She made us sign some papers a long time ago. We're old, Clara. We didn't know what we were signing. We can't read all that legal print. We trusted her. We trusted our own daughter, and she tricked us out of our home. She's accusing Joe and me of being squatters." It was brilliant, a masterpiece of manipulation. She wasn't just a mother in a dispute. She was a victim of elder abuse. She was a victim of a rich, educated child, preying on her simple, God-fearing parents. She had perfectly framed the narrative for maximum community outrage. Yes, Alicia and Chad are here. They have nowhere else to go. And she wants to put them on the street too, with a baby. "Oh, Clara, please, can you please call Pastor John? Can you tell him he has to talk to her? He has to make her see the sin she is committing. Please, I'm so scared. I'm so scared of what she'll do to us. She hung up the phone. The sobbing stopped instantly. The transformation was chilling. She looked up at me, her eyes dry, cold, and utterly triumphant. She had just unleashed the nuclear option. She had just sicked the entire moral authority of our community on me. She, Alicia, and Chad stood there, a united front, their faces smug. They were waiting. They knew I was a respected member of that church. I was on the finance committee. My reputation mattered to me. They didn't have to wait long, 10 minutes. That's all it took. My phone, sitting on the foyer's console table, lit up. The caller ID read Aunt Clara. I ignored it. It immediately rang again. Aunt Clara. I ignored it. A new call came in. Deacon Harris. I ignored it. A text message flashed from my cousin Imani. What is going on? Aunt Clara is saying you're kicking Uncle Joe and Aunt Lorraine out. I ignored it. Then the final call, the one I knew I couldn't ignore, the one they were all waiting for. The caller ID read Pastor John. I looked at my mother. Her smile was one of pure, venomous victory. You going to answer that, Imani? She whispered. Or are you going to disrespect your pastor too? I picked up the phone. I took a deep breath and pressed the speakerphone button. Imani Davis speaking, I said. Sister Imani, Pastor John's voice boomed through the foyer. It was the voice that delivered fire and brimstone sermons every Sunday. It was a voice that commanded respect and, in many cases, fear. It was not a happy voice. Pastor John, good evening, I said calmly. Imani, I will not waste time, he said, his tone heavy with disappointment and judgment. I have just received a most disturbing call from Sister Clara. She tells me she spoke with your mother, Lorraine. She tells me you are putting your own parents out of their home, that you are turning your back on your sister and her family in their time of need. My mother, Alicia, and Chad stood there, lapping it up. My mother was actually dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue, putting on a show for my father. Imani, the pastor continued, this is not who we are. This is not how we as a community treat our elders. The Bible is not ambiguous on this. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land. It does not say, honor them only when it is convenient. It does not say, honor them until they cost you money. It is a commandment, child. He sighed, a sound of deep pastoral weariness. You are a pillar of this community, Imani, a leader. You are on my finance committee. What will people think? What shadow does this cast upon our church, upon the legacy of your family? You are a successful woman. The Lord has blessed you, and you are using that blessing to shame your own blood. You cannot let them be homeless. Imani, whatever this squabble is about, you must end it. You must forgive. You must do the right thing. Am I understood? The weight of his words filled the room. This was the checkmate. This was the move from which my mother believed I could not recover. I was being spiritually and socially blackmailed. I was being ordered to stand down by the highest authority we knew. I looked at my mother's victorious smile. I looked at Alicia's smug smirk. I looked at Chad, who looked bored, already counting the money he would soon be getting, and I spoke. My voice was as calm and clear as a winter morning. Good evening, Pastor John. Thank you for your call. I respect you and I respect the word of God, and I agree the Bible is very clear. The smiles on their faces faltered. This wasn't the sound of surrender. You quoted Exodus, Pastor, I continued, and you are right. We must honor our parents. But the Bible also teaches us in Ephesians, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. It teaches us that there is righteous anger. Imani, the pastor began, but I kept going. You were told a story, Pastor. Now I will tell you the truth. You were told I am kicking my parents out. The truth is, my parents are kicking my children out, my 8 and 10-year-old children, their own grandchildren. The silence on the other end of the phone was sudden. While I was at work today, Pastor, I said, my voice starting to fill with the cold, hard anger I had been suppressing, my mother Lorraine took my children's beds, their clothes and their toys, and she threw them into a cold, damp, unfinished basement. Why? So her golden child, my sister Alicia, and her husband Chad could have my children's bedrooms, so their precious grandson could have the best room. I looked at my mother. Her face was frozen. The smugness was gone. Is that honoring your family, Pastor? I asked. Is that what the legacy of this community is? Sacrificing the innocent for the favored? Lorraine did not mention this. The pastor stammered. No, I'm sure she didn't, I said. She also didn't mention that this house, the one she's accusing me of stealing, is my house. I bought it with my own money after they lost their house because they gave their entire $500,000 retirement fund to my brother-in-law, Chad, for a fraudulent crypto mining scheme. Chad took a half step back. Now wait a minute. I bought this house to save them from being homeless, Pastor, I said, my voice rising. I lied to them. I told them it was a rent to own to protect their pride. I let them live here for 2 years for free. I paid every bill, and their thank you is to violate the tenant agreement I had them sign. Their thank you is to treat my children like garbage. Their thank you is to call our church and lie to paint me as the villain, to perform as the victim in a crisis they created. I was shaking now, but not from fear, from pure, unfiltered, righteous fury. So yes, Pastor, I agree, we must honor our parents, but my first duty as a mother is to protect my children, and I will not allow them to be emotionally and physically abused by anyone, even my own mother. The foyer was a tomb. No one moved, no one breathed. The only sound was the voice on the speakerphone. Pastor John, who was no fool, cleared his throat. Imani, he said, and his voice was completely different. The judgment was gone, the fire was gone, he just sounded tired. Sister Imani, I was not given all the facts. This is a family matter, a deeply complicated family matter. I will pray for all of you. I will pray for wisdom. Good night, Sister Imani. And he hung up. He didn't defend my mother, and he didn't quote any more scripture. He retreated. I looked at my mother. Her face was a terrifying mask of white-hot rage. Her entire plan, her brilliant, devastating flanking maneuver, had just been vaporized in front of her entire family. She had lost. She had been publicly, utterly defeated, not just by me, but by the very authority she had tried to use against me. She was trembling. You, she whispered, you aired our dirty laundry to the pastor. You shamed me. You shamed this family in front of God. Chad, however, was no longer smiling. His face was dark. The casual, smug con artist was gone. The calculation in his eyes had been replaced by something hard and dangerous. He had just heard me tell the pastor of the largest church in Atlanta that he was a fraud who had stolen $500,000. I hadn't just embarrassed my mother, I had exposed him. He stepped forward, pushing past a stunned Alicia. He stood directly in front of me, his face inches from mine. All right, you bitch, he snarled, his voice a low, threatening growl. You want to play with contracts? You want to talk about the law? He smiled, a humorless, terrifying expression. Okay, let's play. You think you're smart with your little lease? But I know the law too. I know about squatters' rights. I know about tenant protections. And I know about the IRS. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Chad's threat hung in the air, thick and toxic. He was actually threatening to call the IRS to take my children. My sister Alicia, Seeing her husband take this dark turn didn't back down. She lit up. "He's right, Imani," she said, her voice giddy with sudden vicious excitement. "Go ahead and call them, Chad. She probably is a criminal. You're going to go to jail, Imani, and don't you worry about Zoe and Marcus." She smiled, a truly grotesque expression. "We'll take good care of them for you right here in this big, beautiful house." My mother and father just stood there watching this unfold. They said nothing. They didn't defend me. They didn't tell Chad he was wrong. They were just watching. I looked at Chad's snarling face, at Alicia's gleeful one, at my mother's stunned silence. I didn't say a word. I turned my back on all of them. I walked out of my office, past my children who were watching from the doorway, their eyes wide with fear. I walked into the center of the grand living room. "What's wrong, Imani?" Chad taunted from behind me. "Finally scared? Finally realizing you messed with the wrong people?" I stopped in front of the massive 80-inch smart television mounted on the wall, the same one my mother had bought for Leo's room. Oh, wait, no, this was the one I had bought. I picked up the remote. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. I swiped on my phone, connecting it to the television's screen mirroring function. My phone's home screen appeared on the giant TV. "You're threatening me with tax fraud, Chad?" I asked, my voice echoing slightly in the large room. Is this the fraud you were talking about?" My thumb moved to a file, an audio file. "You remember when I mentioned the cameras, Chad?" I asked, turning to look at him. "The ones my mother swore didn't exist?" I lied. I let her believe they weren't real, but I installed them 2 years ago, right after your last visit. The one where my good cashmere coat and $2,000 in cash disappeared from my office. Chad's face went rigid. "This one," I said, "is from the hidden camera in my office, the one with the audio recording. This appears to be your voice recording from the prior week, correct?" I initiated playback, and a recording of perfect clarity permeated the space. It was the voice of Chad, yet it differed significantly from the boisterous, unrestrained tone he adopted with us. This was a hushed, clandestine whisper, an audio file, Chad's voice. "Observe, I am indifferent to your methods. I simply require its rectification. It amounts to an additional $250,000. Indeed, held within a separate retirement annuity, a forgotten asset by my foolish father-in-law. My sole objective is its relocation. An audio file, the voice of an unknown man. $250,000 represents a substantial sum to make vanish, Mr. Miller. It is fraught with peril. What of your sister-in-law, the one involved in finance? Will she not detect such a substantial transfer? An audio file, Chad's voice. She is precisely the reason for my call. A straightforward transfer would indeed be detected by her. This is the service for which I compensate you. You must present it as a legitimate, albeit unsuccessful investment. A fund that experienced a collapse, something within the bounds of legality. Can you achieve this or not?" I paused the playback. Chad's complexion had leached away. He was ashen. Alicia appeared on the verge of nausea. "Was that your communication from last week, Chad?" I inquired, my voice deliberately modulated to a dangerous calm. "To your financial advisor situated in the Cayman Islands, your presence was not merely for leisure. You were intending to abscond with the final $250,000 that remained of my parents' assets, funds I had successfully located and secured for them after you pilfered the initial $500,000. My father emitted a faint, strangled sound. "The annuity, my railroad pension. My discourse was not yet concluded, but that is merely a matter of commerce, is it not, Chad? This subsequent segment, this one carries a personal significance." I swiped across my phone's screen. The audio file vanished, supplanted by a video file. I initiated playback. the screen illuminated, displaying a video of the living room. This very living room. The timestamp in the corner indicated 10:30 a.m. this morning while I was engaged in my professional duties. The video captured Alicia and Chad. They were partaking in mimosas on my sofa. Video. Alicia, did you speak with her? Is she proceeding with it? Video. Chad. Naturally. The elder woman will comply with my every instruction. She is presently transferring the children's belongings to the basement. She is entirely convinced of Leo's status as the genuine grandson. Pathetic. Video. Alicia. Good heavens, I am utterly weary of Imani and her two impeccably behaved offspring. It is time they understood their rightful position. My children, Zoe and Marcus, were positioned in the hallway. They overheard the conversation. They heard their aunt's voice. Zoe's hand instinctively flew to her mouth. The video continued. Video. Alicia, her laughter audible. Simply expedite the acquisition of that final sum of money, Chad. Ensure it is cleansed and relocated. The instant that capital enters our offshore account, we depart. We will take Leo with us, and then we will be gone. I am profoundly fatigued by this family. I am exhausted by the matriarch and her incessant dramas, and I am thoroughly sickened by that sanctimonious, judgmental shrew Imani. I terminated playback. The video froze, capturing Alicia's contemptuous, laughing visage. A profound silence descended. No one spoke, no one moved. The sole audible element within the entire residence was the high-pitched electronic hum emanating from the television. My father, Joe, was visibly trembling. He slowly turned his head, his eyes conveying a sorrow so profound it was unsettling. He gazed at Alicia, his cherished, favored daughter. Alicia, he articulated. His voice was a parched rasp. You, the old woman. My mother, Lorraine, did not direct her gaze at Chad, nor did she look at me. Her attention was fixed upon Alicia. Her expression was devoid of anger. It was vacant. It was the countenance of someone whose entire reality had just been irrevocably shattered. The child for whom she had relinquished everything. The one with whom she had just severed my connection. Alicia, Lorraine uttered, her voice thin and bewildered. She sounded like a lost child. You called me the old woman. You were planning to depart. Alicia's face contorted into an expression of pure serpentine dread. She had been unmasked. The charade had concluded. Mom, she stammered, no, that's not. Imani doctored it. She fabricated it. It's a falsehood. However, it was too late. The betrayal was absolute. My mother had just witnessed the truth with her own eyes. As Alicia's frantic, desperate exclamations of, it's fake, reverberated through the living room, a new sound intruded upon the chaos. It was not the doorbell. It was a knock. A forceful, official, rhythmic pounding against the substantial front door. Bang, bang, bang! Everyone froze. Alicia's mendacities evaporated. My father, who had been fixedly regarding Alicia with eyes bereft of life and filled with betrayal, flinched. My mother, still paralyzed by shock, turned a terrified gaze toward the door. Chad's countenance, previously pale with exposure, assumed a deathly, waxy pallor. He recognized that knock. That was not a social summons. I, conversely, experienced a peculiar, chilling tranquility descend upon me. I had been anticipating that sound. What is that? Alicia whispered, her panic shifting from her mother to the door. Chad, who is there? Chad offered no response. He was fixated on me, his eyes wide with a nascent, primal terror. He had finally grasped that he was not the aggressor in this room. He was the quarry. I turned my back on all of them. I proceeded with measured steps, my footfalls echoing on the polished hardwood floor, passing the conspicuous scratches Chad had inflicted with his luggage. I approached the front door. I peered through the peephole. 2 uniformed officers from the Atlanta Police Department were standing on my porch. I inhaled deeply. I disengaged the deadbolt. I opened the door. A male and a female officer stood there, their expressions professional and grave. "Good evening, ma'am," the male officer stated. "Are you Amani Davis?" "Yes, officer," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I am. Thank you for arriving. We received a 911 call originating from this address approximately 1 hour ago," the female officer elaborated, her hand resting near her belt. The call pertained to a domestic threat. "Is everything in order here, Miss Davis?" My mother, Alicia, and Chad were clustered behind me in the hallway, observing. "Yes, officer," I confirmed. "I am the individual who initiated that call about an hour ago when my brother-in-law issued a threat against me, and I fear that since I made that call, the situation has escalated considerably." I stepped aside, widening the doorway. "Would you please enter?" The officers stepped inside, their gazes immediately sweeping the room, taking in the scene. They observed the 2 crying, terrified children peeking from the office hallway. They saw my father slumped against the wall. They saw my mother, pale and shaking. They saw Alicia, her face streaked with tears and makeup. And they observed Chad, who stood rigidly, vibrating with pent-up adrenaline. Then their attention was drawn to the expansive television screen, still frozen on the image of Alicia's conspiratorial, laughing countenance. "What nature of threats, Ms. Davis?" the female officer inquired, directing her attention back to me. "This gentleman," I stated, pointing directly at Chad. "My brother-in-law, Chad Miller, when I informed him that neither he nor my sister were welcome in my residence, he threatened me. He threatened to lodge a false report against me with the IRS and to leverage his connections to have my children, Zoe and Marcus, apprehended by Child Protective Services." Chad emitted a derisive sound, attempting to regain his composure. "That is preposterous. It is her word against mine. She is overwrought. She is the one you should be interrogating. She is not," I interjected, cutting him off. "Officer, if you would please direct your attention to the television." Both officers turned their gaze toward the 80-inch screen. "That," I continued, "is a video captured by a concealed security camera in this room, recorded this morning. It depicts my sister and Mr. Miller deliberating their plan to relocate and displace my children. And, as Mr. Miller so aptly put it, get that final sum of money and be gone." I addressed the male officer. "Additionally, I possess an audio recording from a hidden camera in my office, featuring Mr. Miller detailing a scheme to perpetrate wire fraud by misappropriating the final $250,000 of my parents' retirement fund. The audio is unequivocally clear. He refers to my father as my idiot father-in-law and discusses methods for concealing the funds to avoid detection of the transfer." The male officer's entire demeanor shifted. The polite, procedural concern evaporated. He regarded Chad with unyielding, professional eyes. "Sir, is that your voice on that audio recording?" Chad visibly panicked. That's illegal. You cannot record me. That's inadmissible in court." The female officer advanced towards him, her voice firm. "Sir, Georgia is a one-party consent state for audio recordings, and as Ms. Davis was a participant in the original conversation in which you threatened her, she is fully within her rights. However, frankly, admissibility is a matter for a judge. What I have at this moment is a credible 911 call reporting a threat of extortion. I have a homeowner stating you are trespassing, and I have what appears to be a confession to a conspiracy to commit felony financial fraud, not only against your sister-in-law, but also against your elderly in-laws." She gestured to her partner. "Let's detain him. We can resolve the remainder at the precinct." The male officer stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, I require you to place your hands behind your back." Chad finally lost all semblance of control. "Get your hands off me. You cannot do this. This is a family matter. Alicia, tell them, it's all a lie." But Alicia stood frozen, her gaze fixed on the handcuffs as they were produced. "Sir, do not resist," the officer commanded. Chad attempted to pull his arm away, and in an instant, the officer had him spun around, his arm twisted behind his back, forcing him against the wall. The resonant click of the metal handcuffs snapping shut, that sharp, definitive snick, was the most gratifying sound I had ever experienced. That sound finally shattered Alicia. "No!" she shrieked, a raw, animalistic cry of pure terror. She lunged forward, clawing at the officer's arm. "No, you can't take him. He didn't do anything. It was her. Imani lied. She faked the video. You should be arresting her. She's the criminal." The female officer seized Alicia, pulling her back. "Ma'am, you need to calm down immediately, or you will be joining your husband, charged with obstruction of justice. Do you understand me?" Alicia collapsed onto the floor, her resistance dissolving into a pathetic wailing heap as the male officer began reciting Chad's Miranda rights. "You have the right to remain silent," he stated, and then began escorting the cursing, sputtering con artist toward the door. My mother, Lorraine, finally unfroze. Her entire world had collapsed. Her golden child was a traitor. Her protector, Chad, was a criminal. She had nothing left. She stumbled toward me, her face a mask of raw, desperate, last-ditch pleading. "Imani, please," she sobbed, clutching my arm, the same arm she had never once grasped in comfort during my childhood. "Please don't do this. He's family. You can't. Please, baby, I'm sorry about the room. Tell them to stop. Tell them it was all just a misunderstanding." She clung to me, her nails digging into my skin. "Please, Imani, I'm begging you." I looked down at her hand on my arm. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, just a vast cold emptiness. I looked up and met her eyes. "A misunderstanding?" I inquired, my voice as cold and lifeless as the basement floor. "When you confined my children, your grandchildren, to that frigid, dark basement, was that a misunderstanding?" She withdrew her hand, but I continued. "When you contacted Pastor John, when you lied to him, when you attempted to tarnish my reputation and alienate the entire community against me to achieve your desires, was that a misunderstanding?" She offered no reply. She simply stared at me, her mouth agape, her tears abruptly ceasing. "No, Mother," I stated. "It was not. It was a decision. You made your choice. And these," I gestured to the scene of her downfall, "are the consequences." As if summoned by my pronouncement, a third individual, who had been standing unobtrusively behind the police officers, stepped forward. He was not in uniform, but wore a rumpled suit and carried a clipboard and a substantial envelope. "Excuse me," he announced, his voice loud and bureaucratic. "Is there a Joseph Davis and a Lorraine Davis on the premises?" My father, still slumped against the wall, looked up, bewildered. My mother turned. I am Lorraine Davis. What is it now?" The man proceeded forward, all business. "My name is Marcus Jensen. I am a certified civil process server for the Fulton County Marshal's Department. Mr. Davis, Mrs. Davis, you are hereby served." He handed the thick envelope to my mother. She accepted it, her hands trembling. "Served? What? What is this? I don't understand." The man, Mr. Jensen, consulted his clipboard. "This," he stated, his voice devoid of any emotion, "is a notice to quit. It is an immediate lawful eviction notice." My mother's shriek was so piercing it barely sounded human. No, this is my house. You can't. Imani." The process server continued reading from his document, his voice cutting through her screams. This notice is served on behalf of the legal and sole property owner, Ms. Imani Davis. You are ordered to vacate the premises immediately. This is not a 30-day notice. This is a notice for an incurable breach of your lease. He glanced at the paper. Let's see. Specifically for violating Section 12B, permitting unauthorized long-term occupants, and, yes, willingly and knowingly, allowing criminal activity, specifically conspiracy to commit financial fraud, to be planned and executed on the premises. That is a severe violation. My father, Joe, finally broke completely. He emitted a sound like a deflating balloon and simply crumpled. He slid down the wall, landing heavily on the floor, his head in his hands rocking back and forth. Lorraine remained standing, the white envelope clutched in her hand, her mouth open in a silent scream. The process server regarded her, his face impassive. Ma'am, the Atlanta police officers are present to ensure that you gather your essential personal belongings, such as medications and identification, and vacate the premises immediately. You will be permitted to return with a police escort in precisely 24 hours to retrieve the remainder of your possessions. Thereafter, they will be considered abandoned property. He inclined his head toward me. Ms. Davis, have a pleasant evening. The golden child was on the floor, weeping. The con artist was in handcuffs, being escorted to a police car. The enabler was a broken heap on the floor, and the matriarch was finally rendered utterly speechless. I turned my back on the entire scene. I walked away from the wreckage of the family that had never truly loved me. I proceeded to the office doorway, where Zoe and Marcus were huddled, their eyes wide. I knelt down. My young son, Marcus, was half asleep on his feet, exhausted. I offered a genuine smile, reserved solely for them. I lifted Marcus, settling his weight on my hip. I took Zoe's small, warm hand in mine. "Come on, babies," I whispered, kissing them both. "Let's go home?" It has been 3 weeks. The house is quiet, it is clean. The heavy, oppressive furniture my mother insisted upon has been removed, donated. The basketball pennants are gone. Zoe's vibrant, colourful artwork adorns the walls of her room once more. Marcus's star-patterned curtains hang in his window again. We are in the kitchen. The afternoon sun streams in. Zoe is laughing, a streak of flour across her nose. Marcus is meticulously arranging chocolate chips onto a sheet of cookie dough. The aroma of baking sugar and vanilla fills the air. My name is Amani, and for 39 years I endeavoured to purchase affection from the family into which I was born. I believed that if I was simply more successful, if I earned more money, if I assumed more of their burdens and resolved more of their predicaments, I presumed that one day my mother would finally look at me and utter the 4 words I perpetually longed to hear. "I am proud of you." The day she relegated my children to that frigid basement, I finally understood with absolute certainty that that day would never arrive, and I am at peace with that. Chad is facing numerous severe fraud charges. The audio and video evidence I supplied, coupled with the IRS investigation I initiated, means he will likely spend a considerable duration incarcerated. Alicia, with her bank accounts frozen as part of the investigation and not a single penny to her name, was compelled to take Leo and implore Aunt Clara for a place to stay. The community that my mother attempted to weaponize against me is now observing her golden child subsisting on church charity. My father contacts me daily. He leaves these lengthy, rambling, tearful voicemails. They are replete with regret. They are brimming with excuses. I have not answered the phone. I do not know if I ever will. And my mother, she actually attempted to sue me. She filed a civil claim, asserting that she possessed equity in my residence due to her having served as a house sitter for 2 years. The judge examined the lease agreement and her signed admission of violating its terms, He dismissed the case in under 5 minutes. It transpires that when one perceives a gift as an entitlement, one ultimately forfeits both. I have learned that one cannot select the family into which one is born. However, one possesses every right and every obligation to safeguard the family one creates. Have you ever been compelled to establish an unyielding boundary with your own family, a point of no return? Share your experiences in the comments below. Zoe laughs, a bright, beautiful, carefree sound. She throws her flower-dusted arms around my neck, and I embrace her in return. Marcus, not wishing to be excluded, nestles in, wrapping his sticky, chocolate-covered hands around both of us. I hold them tightly, inhaling the scent of sugar and security. For the first time, this house, my house, finally feels like home. This narrative illustrates that genuine kinship is defined by respect and protection, not solely by blood. For years, Imani attempted to purchase the affection of a family that was resolutely determined to devalue her. She realized that her self-worth was never contingent upon their validation. The day she ceased seeking their approval and began protecting her children marked the moment she truly claimed her agency. At times, the most potent boundary is not an act of cruelty, but a necessary act of self-preservation. You cannot choose the family you are born into, but you must safeguard the family you establish. Have you ever been forced to implement an unshakable boundary with your own family to preserve your peace?